I think you've been instrumental in so much in Arizona, here in the Valley. Talk to us a little bit about what John McCain's meant for, growth and development here in Arizona, because this is a state that has changed and exploded in so many different ways over the years.
Well, when you are involved in trying to make things happen, be it the expansion of the Civic Plaza downtown, the light rail system, the transportation system in our state, you needed political support. And obviously, I needed to lean on our leadership, who represented the state of Arizona, to represent us well in Washington, D.C., so that we were getting our fair share of what was required for us to move forward, to expand, to grow, to do all those things. So many, many conversations with John about each and every one of those issues. And again, he was always there to be supportive.
And we know of Senator McCain as a fighter. What can you tell us as a close friend to maybe shed some light on his behavior after the diagnosis? Did he say anything to you or express anything to you about this latest fight in his life?
No, I would say this. I would say watching him from a distance as it relates to, post-announcement regarding his illness, he did this with such class. He did it with such dignity. It's amazing. I'm not sure how many people, myself included, would respond, but he set a great example about how to fade away in such a classy way.
Jerry, hang on the phone for us. Don't hang up right now, but we do have reaction that is now pouring in from so many people across the country, so many of our representatives. Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate, Kyrsten Sinema, just tweeted this, if we can pull it up. She says, "Arizona will never be the same. At Senator John McCain, may you rest in peace, and may comfort come to your family and to all of us who will grieve your loss to our great country, a statesman, a patriot, our Arizona hero." That is Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema, who is running for Senator Jeff Flake's tweet. Jerry, your reaction to that reaction from Kyrsten Sinema?
Well, she could not have put it any better than she did, and I concur with everything she said.
All right. And to my producers back in the control room, do we have any other reaction that is pouring in at this moment? All right. We are still waiting to hear from Jeff Flake, and as soon as we do, we will bring Senator Flake on the air. Hopefully, we're trying to reach him by phone right now. But again, this breaking news that unfolded just around 4:30 today, word in from the McCain campaign that the senator did pass away up at his ranch up in Cornville, where he has been rehabilitating and recovering from his battle with brain surgery, which he lost the battle to brain cancer today at around 4:45 p.m. We do believe that the body of Senator John McCain will be brought down from the high country down here to Central Phoenix to a mortuary. And we are still working on receiving information about funeral arrangements so that the public can also have a chance to grieve here and pay their last respects and pay their condolences to the McCain family.
And McCain was diagnosed with glioblastoma. We have mentioned a very aggressive form of brain cancer, and it's a type of brain cancer that can be very difficult to treat as well. Nicole Kreitz has more on that.
Glioblastoma is an aggressive form of brain cancer that can be tough to treat.
A glioblastoma is the most common and unfortunately also the most malignant primary brain tumor.
Increased pressure in the brain can cause symptoms of headache, nausea, vomiting, and drowsiness. The average patient survives about 15 months.
I always encourage my patients that averages are just that. They're averages, and there are many people who do better than average, and I have patients who live for 2, 5, even 10 years.
The American Brain Tumor Association says more than 12,000 cases are expected to be diagnosed this year. Treatment typically involves surgery to remove as much of the tumor as possible, then chemotherapy and radiation. Many patients are also opting for experimental treatments.
Tumor vaccines or immunotherapy, viral therapy. There's a new device that basically you can wear and creates alternating currents that are designed to confuse the tumor cells.
Glioblastoma is the type of cancer that killed Senator Ted Kennedy and the son of former Vice President Joe Biden.
Right, and obviously the Biden family very close to the McCains. We were talking about Senator McCain being able to reach across both aisles and work with everybody, and that relationship, the McCain and Biden relationship, could be no better example.
Again, old school. Old school. They go back decades, serving in the Senate together. Mr. Biden had visited McCain recently up in the high country. Good friends, bipartisanship, old school stuff.
And as we continue our McCain coverage tonight, Senator Jon McCain, born into a military family, his love for all branches of the armed services, that, my friends, is well known. As a naval aviator, his love of flying was shared by the airmen and the women over at Luke Air Force Base. As C. McLaughlin reports tonight, it was that shared passion of aviation and a little bit of his famous temper that helped save the base from the housing boom of the new millennium.
With that development that was coming towards the West Valley, it's difficult to say that Luke would have had a long future here in the West Valley.
It's a hypothetical that former F-16 fighter pilot Rusty Mitchell would rather not think about. The retired squad commander and commercial pilot now serves as the director of Luke Air Force Base's Community Initiatives team. That's where he brings together elected leaders with the base commanders to work on community support. A somewhat difficult task when he first took over the job back in 2003, which was smack in the middle of Arizona's housing boom that was slowly encroaching on the military base.
Maricopa County at the time was the #1 county in the nation, along with Clark County up in Las Vegas, as the fastest growing county in the nation. So if something hadn't been addressed then, we would have had issues down the road.
When's the first time you met Senator Jon McCain?
It was right at the same time I started this job, June of 2003, I can remember it. It was a meeting here on base between the wing commander at the time, General Phil Breedlove, and all the West Valley mayors and the county and the state representatives came in to see Senator McCain, who wanted to talk to them that it was time for the whole community to get focused on addressing development in the West Valley and making sure that Luke Air Force Base would be able to continue its mission.
Remember, this was before the recession, at a time when land developers were gobbling up hundreds of acres at a time out here in the West Valley to develop housing. But when it came to the base security and its boundaries, that's when the legendary temper of Senator Jon McCain rose to the surface. So in that meeting, there sits the senator. What's happening around him?
Yeah, Senator wasn't sitting down. It was almost a one-way conversation between the senator and a couple of the mayors. There was disagreements. There were disagreements between the mayors and the senator on how and why Luke Air Force Base should be protected. It was a rather heated and voiceful meeting at one point, to the point where I was sitting there wondering what I'd gotten myself into. But what it did is it clearly established the fact that Senator McCain was going to be there for our back and as our protection going forward for whatever mission sustainment needs that Luke Air Force Base had.
Now, in that meeting, Mitchell immediately noticed the difference between the senator's public persona of a smooth yet maverick politician contrasted greatly with the brash and aggressive former Navy fighter pilot.
Now, this is clearly the former naval aviator fighter pilot came out in him, and that was the fighter pilot, Senator McCain, talking to the mayors at that time. So it was a mixture of both, but he had some emotion in it. All the mayors eventually came together, and the support that we have from all the West Valley cities is incredible, and it's unmatched across the country. You know, the fact that we are a $2.4 billion economic driver to the West Valley brought everybody together, on top of the strategic importance of training the fighter pilots. And sure enough, 15 years after that meeting, here we are, the largest training base for the F-35 in the military, and with a 50-year future ahead of us.
With Luke's future clearly bright, Mitchell was clear to point out the advantage of having someone like McCain in the Senate for the state of Arizona.
And to tell you the truth, knowing that you have that in your bag going into whatever discussions you have, that the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee is your senior senator from Arizona, that's priceless. And it really gave us a lot of leverage going into things.
And his legacy?
It'll be that Arizona and the military training support of the state of Arizona will always be there because of the efforts that he had and put into it. He's the one that really set the standard for military support in Arizona.
And as we continue our coverage on the passing of Senator Jon McCain, we want to get straight to Senator Jeff Flake. Good afternoon, Senator. This is a heavy day for all of us.
It certainly is. I can't express the sorrow that I feel, and I know that that's shared by all Arizonans.
Senator, if you can, briefly, if you can, tell us what it was like working alongside somebody like a Senator John McCain in the U.S. Senate, his fight, his passion, his belief in himself and his belief in policies and how he never really buckled to pressure ever to anyone.
Right.
What was it like working with Senator McCain?
Well, I'm simply known as the other senator from Arizona, and I think that title belongs to any senator other than John McCain from Arizona for a long time. He was just larger than life, and always felt like a big brother that would protect me. And he very much a towering figure in the Senate, and just as you mentioned, his willingness to stand alone and to be an independent voice was just unmatched.
Yeah, and Senator Dennis Welch here, and I just wanted to ask you, Senator McCain, he used to joke, you've heard that joke, he used to say that if he looked like you, he would have been president. Talk to us a little bit about his notorious sense of humor, because he had a very sharp wit about him, didn't he?
He sure did. I campaigned with him on his campaign, and then he campaigned on mine, and we'd go up to Snowflake, and he'd joke endlessly that if I didn't have 69 first cousins on my father's side, I would never have been elected, and that was my advantage. And he's probably right, but it was an incredible sense of humor, and just appreciated by all of it. A quick wit and just passionate too. I just wrote an op-ed. I think the Washington Post will be running, and told about an experience I had early on, traveling back to Arizona when I was just in the House of Representatives for a few years, or less than a year. I was taking a lot of heat at home from editorial pages and reporters and elected officials for not getting earmarks and passing up on parochial spending. And I remember on a flight, John came back to me and stuck his finger in my chest. I thought, oh no, he's going to let me have it too. And he just said, don't back down. You're doing the right thing. People will come around. It's a fascinating. That was all I needed.
And that's a fascinating, and I want to add to that, Senator Flake, because you are somebody who has gotten beaten up by many people of your own party, constituents, for speaking up against some of the behavior of President Trump over the past year. And a lot of people have also beat up Senator McCain for some of his stances and him speaking up and back against the President of the United States. What has that been like? I know that you've had private conversations with him, but do you think that has had an impact on the senator over the past year, knowing that so many people in the Republican Party are mad at him and have been mad at him for speaking up against President Trump?
Well, that never stopped John McCain from doing what he thought was right. And John McCain is one who has always seen the good in his opponents. And everybody's familiar with his campaign when he stood up to one of his own supporters who was denigrating Barack Obama as a candidate, and that's just a little removed from kind of the politics we see today, the smash mouth politics, and so that's what has always made John McCain stand out, and why I think he's so appreciated and loved.
And Senator, talk a little bit about, the senator's intellectual curiosity. I mean, we all have seen those senators, those lawmakers, they go off to Congress, and if they've been there as long as John McCain has been there, they kind of start mailing it in. But it always seemed like Senator McCain was on top of everything.
He was. And one thing, I was up there yesterday with he and his family, and I expressed to his family how much I appreciated and all of us appreciated his voice during this past year, when it was very difficult for him. That he maintained contact. He was with his staff. He dictated tweets. He spoke when we needed somebody to speak. And he was intellectually curious to the end. I was always fascinated. You've wanted a fascinating experience. Travel on the Straight Talk.
Yeah, the Straight Talk Express. I think the senator was saying, Senator, did we lose you? We may have gotten.
No.
Nope, we got him. We got you back. Continue your
Yeah,
thought, Senator.
no, I was just saying, to hear him hold court with reporters and to talk everything from obscure sports trivia to the latest novel he'd read or highbrow literature, he was phenomenal. I don't know when he ever slept, but I was just always amazed at the man.
All right, Senator Jeff Flake. Senator, thank you so much for
Thanks
spending.
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, for spending some of your evening for what is no doubt a very tough moment, not only for you for losing one of your dearest friends and your dearest colleagues. We appreciate you calling in today and just sharing some of that sentiment with us. And I know you'll have your phone on standby because we will be calling you later tonight. But first, we are getting some reaction tonight from Meghan McCain. Senator, you may want to listen to the statement that we're about to read. Again, the daughter of Senator John McCain, Meghan, just now tweeting out a full statement tonight, Lindsay.
Yeah, just minutes ago, she said, "I love you forever, my beloved father." And she included this letter to her dad. She said, "I was with my father at the end, as he was with me at my beginning. In 33 years we shared together. He raised me, taught me, corrected me, comforted me, encouraged me, and supported me in all things. He loved me and I loved him. He taught me how to live. His love and his care, ever present, always unfailing, took me from a girl to a woman, and he showed me what it is to be a man." She ended this note with a quote, "The dream is ending. This is the morning." And that is a quote from C.S. Lewis from his work called The Last Battle.
It is a powerful, powerful message, the bond that we have seen between father and daughter.
A mutual respect.
Between Meghan and Senator John McCain. And I have met Meghan McCain on multiple times, ran into her on the streets of New York City 2 years ago. And let me tell you something, if you've never met her in person, she is a spitfire herself. She is just like her father. I swear she channels some of her father's fight in her. Just turn on The View any morning and you will you'll see the John McCain and his daughter Meghan.
Yeah, family always very important to him, and obviously he showed that, carrying that love for his family throughout his entire career. And he was very, just always expressing. You always saw Meghan, particularly around even during those, especially during that 2008 campaign. She was always by his side, in those big moments when the accepting of the nomination, and and even in that concession speech. So
again, reaction is pouring in. Spencer Blake, let's bring you back into our coverage tonight over at our content center. We have a lot of reaction pouring in from the president, Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton, Cindy McCain. What do you got going on?
We literally have a bunch of tabs open here with so many people who were close to John McCain, who knew him, who are also influential figures, and all of them have stuff to say. And we want to start with Cindy McCain, of course, the senator's wife. She has a new tweet that says, "My heart is broken. I'm so lucky to have lived the adventure of loving this incredible man for 38 years. He passed the way he lived, on his own terms, surrounded by the people he loved, in the place he loved best." We love seeing the things that Cindy McCain has written, and again, in addition to what Lindsay read from his daughter Meghan, the President Donald Trump, has also tweeted. He said, quote, "My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you." So again, these tweets coming in right now, a lot of them, as people are processing this news, we're seeing these tweets appear from other figures who have been close to John McCain in various aspects. There's one from Lindsey Graham, who, of course, also a senator himself, and his first reaction on Twitter was, "America and freedom have lost one of her greatest champions, and I've lost one of my dearest friends and mentors."
And two of them were allies in the Senate.
And what kind of things, Dennis, did they have that showcases the bond that Lindsey Graham had with Senator John McCain?
When you think about Lindsey Graham, they sat side by side. When Lindsey Graham ran for president, yes. Lindsey Graham ran for president. A lot of people kind of forget that, but John McCain was his loyal friend, and he endorsed him, stood side by side with him. They talked about it after the campaign, and in a very emotional moment. If you've seen this video, it's hard not to get choked up. But Lindsey Graham says that he loves John McCain. He loves him like a brother.
Yeah.
Those two are so tight, and it's just amazing.
And he was a mentor to Senator Lindsey Graham. When Lindsey Graham was elected to the U.S. Senate, I believe it was the year 2002. I could be wrong. But when Lindsey Graham was finally elected to the U.S. Senate, he attached himself to Senator John McCain, and McCain brought Senator Lindsey Graham overseas as our country was battling the wars, and Senator Lindsey Graham wanted to absorb as much of the policy and influence that he could from a Senator John McCain. And so that's where they truly bonded in their friendship was the war and traveling overseas
and you
together.
Look at some of the controversial legislation they put together, and I'm thinking about the Gang of Eight bill, that comprehensive bipartisan immigration bill. Certainly didn't win a lot of friends over on the Republican side. Very, very controversial bill. They stood side by side. They took the fire together and went through it, and that shows the kind of fierce loyalty and the toughness of John McCain and just the loyalty and the bond between Lindsey Graham and Mr. McCain.
And more reaction is pouring in tonight. Let's go ahead and show you what the mayor of Phoenix, Greg Stanton, just tweeted out moments ago. He says, McCain as an American hero by any measure, and he was ingrained in our state's identity as much as anyone. Just as important as the battles he fought was how he fought those battles with valiance and decency. He added that he was honored to know him and will continue to work on issues that were important to him, especially the restoration of the Rio Salado.
And we also want to get to Larry Fitzgerald, of course, a famous Cardinals player who knew John McCain and the McCain family, of course, power players in our state, saying rest in peace to an American hero, statesman, servant of the people, and dear friend. Godspeed, Senator McCain. My prayers for Cindy and the beautiful McCain family.
And I don't believe we have a full screen made of this, but you can come on back to us here in the studio because this one's an important statement coming in from his good friend from the other side of the aisle, Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden. Again, and that is a bond of two true men who are best friends.
Again, a couple of guys who go back decades together working in the Senate. I just want to read this here. John McCain was many things, a proud graduate of the Naval Academy, a Senate colleague, a political opponent. But to me, more than anything, John was a friend. He will be missed dearly.
And you know, one of the bonds that they shared together, Joe Biden's son, Beau, died of the exact same brain tumor. And that was the connection because Meghan McCain has said on multiple counts that Joe Biden has turned into a secondary father and has truly helped Meghan McCain and the McCain family get through this time. Meghan said that she would call on Joe Biden all the time saying, how did you get through this?
Navigating this.
Give me some hope.
Well, that was
give me some perspective as I get through
emotional, moment when they appeared on when Joe Biden appeared on her morning talk show.
The View was a powerful
interview.
A
very powerful moment when they embraced each other.
Family and friendship above politics is the life lesson, and I think that so many of us saw the relationship between a Democratic vice president and somebody as so powerful as John McCain on the Republican side. Two men who fundamentally disagree on some fundamental issues going on in this country, but they saw through all of that and they saw each other as friends first.
And he preached
cared
that
about each other's
bipartisanship. He preached that his entire career, to work together. He prided himself on being able to work on big issues with the other side of the aisle. And it's unfortunate that he passes when he had so many concerns about where the state of politics are in this country right now, because it is.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Rena Ninen at CBS News headquarters in New York. John McCain, senator, presidential candidate, and Vietnam War hero, has died after a 13-month battle with brain cancer. The Republican from Arizona was 81. His family announced yesterday he was discontinuing medical treatment. CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cortez looks back at the life of John McCain.
I've been an imperfect servant of my country for many years, but I've been her servant first, last, and always.
John Sidney McCain III was a military hero who became a maverick politician. He joined the family business, becoming a Navy pilot. In 1967, on a bombing run over Hanoi, he was shot down and badly injured, then bayoneted after splashing down in a lake.
When they found out that my father was an admiral, they took me to a hospital.
While holding him as a prisoner of war, the North Vietnamese tried to exploit his family connections. They offered him an early release, but he refused to violate the military code of first in, first out. He was finally freed after 5.5 years of beatings and torture.
I do not recommend the treatment, but I know that I'm a better person for it.
In 1982, he was elected to the U.S. House from Arizona, and 4 years later to the Senate. He earned a reputation for straight talk.
If the special interests continue to play a greater and greater role in the formulation of legislation, then we will see a breakdown of democracy as we know it. And I'm not exaggerating.
In 2008, he clinched the Republican nomination, choosing another maverick as a running mate.
Governor Sarah Palin of the great state of Alaska.
Palin energized conservatives, but in the midst of a financial crisis, the country was ready for a change. Democrat Barack Obama beat McCain with a 2-to-1 electoral landslide. He returned to the Senate, became chair of the Armed Services Committee, drew fire from Donald Trump.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
And returned it.
That in many respects, this administration is in disarray.
But in the summer of 2017, the normally sharp McCain grew fatigued and had a few verbal stumbles.
In the case of Mr. Comey, the President Comey, case of President Trump.
Tests revealed glioblastoma, an aggressive form of brain cancer.
This disease has never had a more worthy opponent.
Still, the former fighter pilot returned to the Senate to cast a decisive vote against a slapdash effort to repeal parts of Obamacare. And after 3.5 decades in Congress, he left his colleagues with an entreaty to work together.
We're getting nothing done, my friends. We're getting nothing done. And the times when I was involved, even in a modest way, with working on a bipartisan response to a national problem or threat, are the proudest moments of my career and by far the most satisfying.
A message only a maverick could deliver. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, Washington.
To repeat, Senator Jon McCain of Arizona has died after a 13-month battle with brain cancer. He was 81. There will be more about Senator McCain on your local news, on this CBS station, and on our 24-hour streaming news service, CBSN. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Rena Ninan, CBS News, New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to cbsnews.com.
Moment that really stuck with me in following the life and the career of somebody who's covered Jon McCain for so many years. And then I would love for you to comment on that and then also share something of yours. So I'll give you a moment to think about it. But I'll never forget the moment when Senator McCain was running for president back in 2008 against Barack Obama. And he was at a campaign rally, or a town hall meeting. And he was taking questions from the audience, and this woman took the microphone, and she was calling Senator Obama a Muslim. And she didn't trust him because he was a Muslim. And he immediately stopped her and said, "No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am." Again, excuse me, we are showing you these live pictures right now. This is what we believe to be the motorcade. And for my producers who are feeding me this information, is this motorcade up in the high country at his ranch in Cornville? It is. So again, these are live pictures coming from the McCain Ranch. Senator Kyl I don't know if you're watching 3 TV at your home right now, but this is what we're showing our viewers. There is a large motorcade that is now appears to either be leaving or entering the compound, the McCain compound up in Cornville. It is where the senator passed away earlier this afternoon. Let's keep these live pictures going. But Senator, back to the story about how he cut off that woman at the town hall, and he goes, "No, ma'am, he is not a Muslim. He is of Christian faith. He is a good family man. We just happen to have fundamental differences on the issues of this country." But I'll never forget when Senator McCain said, "Obama is a decent man." And that always stood out to me because, as I believe Senator Jeff Flake said, Mr. Kyl, was that he always saw the best in his political opponents. What can you add on that?
Well, no, that's exactly correct. And I heard what Senator Flake said. He's exactly right. And I know that's a famous bit of film, and it's a good thing to keep in your file because it does illustrate the way that Jon approached his campaigns and the way that he approached life. He was a partisan. He was tough, but he wasn't going to let anybody try to score inappropriate points on things that he just thought were not proper discourse. And that's a good example of exactly what he felt. I can remember him coming on the Senate floor and saying, "Look, I don't care about the situation here. These Democrats deserve a vote on whatever it was they were trying to get a vote on." I can remember him doing that. So he was equal opportunity in his criticisms and his support.
As somebody who has known him professionally, and you worked alongside of him, I believe you said, for 18 years, Senator Kyl, you see the current state of politics that we're living in right now, and I think one of the biggest votes that will go down in history when we all reflect back on Senator McCain was, of course, the Obamacare vote, where he gave that thumbs down right there on the Senate floor. And he did. You know, Senator McCain would oftentimes get beat up by members of his own party, by Republicans in general. And especially it's gone that way over the past year or two. And I just wondering, as you're sitting there on the sidelines now as a former senator from Arizona, and I know that you're observing all this stuff and you're watching it, what has been some of the feelings that you've seen over the press coverage or just some of the statements being made by members of the Republican Party against Senator John McCain, and just your reflection on that?
Well, John didn't always hew to the party line and didn't always vote with all of his colleagues. He and I had some disagreements. In fact, one of the very first things I remember in the Senate is I'd only been there 3 or 4 days, and I went down to vote, and I realized he'd already voted, and he had voted differently than I was intending to vote. And before I voted, I found I was going to vote yes, and I see you voted no, and he just...
Yeah,
Johnny, he always liked to call me Johnny. He said, Johnny, don't worry about it. He said, we're going to have a lot of disagreements. Don't worry about it. I vote the way I vote, you vote the way you vote, don't worry about it. And so, yeah, sometimes we voted differently, and I would have voted differently on that particular vote. But it didn't matter. He did what he thought was right, and he and I, while we may have had our private disagreements, we didn't let that interfere with our ability to represent the people of Arizona. And I, with all due respect, I think we did a pretty good job as a team.
All right, I was going to say, Senator, can you talk to us a little bit about the Maverick legacy? I mean, do you think this is a fair legacy for this man, considering everything else he's done? I mean, obviously, he did pick his moments where he bucked the party, but he, was a Republican man through and through.
Yeah, well, he was both, and he liked the phrase maverick, and then at one point he said, no, I'm not really a maverick, and but he was, and I think he would agree to that. He did what he thought was best, and damn the consequences. Well, he didn't tell the people of Arizona any different. He said, this is who I am, and if you want to support me, know that I'll do what I think is right, and then I'll come back and explain to you why.
And that is, Senator Kyl, thank you so much for spending some moments of this afternoon on a day that so many people are grieving, and I know that you and your family are grieving the loss of Senator McCain. Thank you for calling us today, and thank you for just sharing some of those personal stories reflecting back on Senator McCain. Former Senator Jon Kyl, who served greatly for the state of Arizona, was a colleague of Senator John McCain for 18 years. Senator Kyl, thank you very much, and keep your phone handy. We will be calling you back over the course of the next day or two. I want to bring into the conversation my good friend from Good Morning Arizona, Javier Soto, who we called in at the last minute today when the news broke. Javi, you've been around this business for a long time. You've been here in the state of Arizona, and I know you have had your experiences of dealing with Senator John McCain. Reflect back on the moment that you heard the news from yesterday when he was going to stop treatment, and just your reaction.
And I think immediately when you hear that they were going to suspend treatment, you start drawing on some of those memories. And I think one of the more vivid memories that sticks out to me, and Dennis, I don't know if you were at 3TV yet or you were there covering it as a newspaper reporter, but the 2008 campaign, when he gave his acceptance speech. I mean, you saw him toward the end of that run. He was beat up. He knew that he was an underdog in that, but he continued that with so much grace. And that last concession speech that he gave with so much grace, right in front of his home crowd there at the Biltmore.
Powerful.
And you just knew what kind of man he was. He wanted to win, and he often joked about that after. Said, how'd you get through the loss? And he would talk about how, I cried like a baby. I would sleep for a little bit, I'd wake up, I'd cry, and that became, his signature joke. But with so much grace, and then jumped right back into it and said, let's get to work. And during that concession speech, you'll recall, he tried to gather the Americans to support President Barack Obama, saying, this is one America, we need to move forward here.
All right, we want to take you now to downtown Phoenix. We were mentioning earlier that Governor Ducey sent out a tweet saying that all flags will be lowered at half staff. We do have a crew in downtown Phoenix. My producer telling us that Brianna Whitney, one of our reporters, is there, and I believe, if we can show the live pictures here, that they are in the process, Brianna, of lowering that flag down there at the Capitol to half staff. Talk us through it.
Yeah, they are. He just got to the Capitol here. This is Ray. He's going to go lower, actually, the national flag right now. We were talking to him. He said he found out from his granddaughter today that John McCain had passed away, and it was his job today to come out here and lower these flags to half staff. here at the Capitol and the Capitol complex in the downtown area. He says he's been working for the state for 30 years, so you can imagine how much he felt when he heard that John McCain had passed away earlier today. And he's going to be doing this around here in the area. Not a lot of activity around the Capitol right now, but we're seeing more people stopping by as they hear about what's going on. So Ray just finished up. He said it's always the national flag that goes down to half-staff last. It's also the flag that goes up first in the morning. None of these flags can be higher than our nation's flag. So he's just finishing up right now. You can see that angle we've got here. Just a beautiful sight here at the Capitol. I mean, we've got the clouds in the background. We now see these flags at half-staff, obviously honoring an American hero that many respect here in Arizona. Guys, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, that is Brianna Whitney. Again, live pictures coming into our newsroom tonight. Governor Ducey has ordered all flags across the state be lowered at half-staff. We do have a comment now coming in, some reaction from former President Barack Obama. Javi.
Yeah, he just tweeted out, and I quote, John McCain and I were members of different generations, came from completely different backgrounds, and competed at the highest level of politics. But we shared for all of our differences a fidelity of something higher, the ideals for which generations of Americans and immigrants alike have fought, marched, and sacrificed. We saw our political battles even as a privilege, something noble, an opportunity to serve as stewards of those high ideals at home and to advance them around the world. We saw this country as a place where anything is possible and citizenship as our patriotic obligation to ensure it forever remains that way. Few of us have been tested the way John once was or required to show the kind of courage that he did. But all of us can aspire to the courage to put the greater good above our own. At John's best, he showed us what that means, and for that, we are all in his debt. Michelle and I send our most heartfelt condolences to Cindy and their family.
And these are two guys who battled it out in 2000, 2007, 2008.
I mean, such eloquent words from a former political opponent. I mean, those two, they went at it tooth and nail, but obviously the whole lot of respect. We've talked a lot of people are going to be talking a lot and reminding voters about that moment in that 2008 campaign where the woman said she couldn't trust Barack Obama because he was a Muslim. McCain corrected her on that point and moved on. I mean, obviously, fierce opponents, a lot of respect between the two.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Old school, as many people would say, that's old school American politics at work right there. Two men going at it on the campaign trail. Winner wins, loser loses, and then they move on and they work together. We do want to continue our coverage over at Senator John McCain's office. Kim Powell is standing by live for us outside of his office. Kim.
Yeah, right behind me is where he served the American people and the people of Arizona for the last several decades. He settled here in our state in 1982 and served in Congress for 4 years until in 1986 he won the Senate office. That means he has been serving Arizona in the Senate for the last 31 years, a clear staple in this community. So far, we haven't seen anyone come by his office just yet, but we did talk to a security guard who told us that they did not want us to come inside at this time. Completely understandable, of course, but we do anticipate that more people will come by this evening as the news spreads of his passing, and they'll pay their respects to the senator. For now, I will send it back to you guys, but we'll keep you updated if we see anything.
All right, that is Kim Powell out there. Kim, you're gonna be stationed out there for the remainder of the night, and let us know if you do get reaction just from constituents here in Arizona showing their respects. I'm sure at some point today people will make their way over to John McCain's office. And we do want to continue our coverage of Senator John McCain. Then Navy Lieutenant Commander John McCain was held captive in North Vietnam from 1967 to 1973 after his plane went down.
Yeah, he broke his leg and both arms and was held in a Vietnamese hospital. Morgan Lowe has a look back at his time.
What is your name?
Lieutenant Commander John McCain.
It is this film clip of John McCain as a seriously injured POW in Vietnam that created the U.S. view of him as both a hero and a casualty of war. After being shot down over Hanoi, McCain spent 5.5 years in the notorious Hanoi Hilton prison, where he was routinely beaten and tortured.
Does he ever talk about this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Grant Woods knew McCain for 35 years.
He doesn't talk about it very much. I have probably had
Well, I've had thousands of conversations with John McCain my whole life. And an in-depth, serious talk about his time as a prisoner of war, probably half a dozen. He just doesn't really talk about it too much.
But Woods believes that the time in Hanoi shaped the rest of McCain's life.
I think the prisoner of war experience galvanized for him the importance to have a lifetime of service to the United States.
When he was released, he served as a liaison to the U.S. Senate, the beginning of a new career in politics, one of a handful of Vietnam vets who became politicians. But McCain was different.
He experienced the war in a very, very different way than almost anyone.
Kyle Longley is a political science and history professor at Arizona State University.
Sitting in Hanoi Hilton for that long and refusing to be released at points where he could have been, which was a great act of bravery or of sacrifice, is going to, shape your worldview.
Longley says McCain became a hawk, someone who believed that when there was a conflict involving American troops, America needed to be all in.
He walked away like many Vietnam veterans, thinking, if we'd just been given the resources, if we'd just been given the support back home, we could have been more successful.
Throughout his years in the Senate and during his unsuccessful runs for the presidency, McCain displayed a maverick streak you can trace back to his days as a naval aviator. He also rejected torture of any kind by the U.S. government, a conviction he developed in that prison in Vietnam.
Lieutenant Commander Jon McCain.
He has lived one of the great American lives. I mean, I just look at everything he's done, and it's there's very few people in our country's history who have had the life he's had. It's pretty remarkable.
And that was Morgan Lowe reporting tonight. We have more statements coming in, more reaction coming into our newsroom tonight. And this from Congresswoman Ann Kirkpatrick, tweeting out a statement today saying this: all of the powerful actions and the influential words of Senator McCain's career boiled down to a simple phrase: country first. She added that McCain dedicated his life's work to defending and enhancing our democracy. Senator McCain pushed aside partisan politics when it challenged the constitutional process and our American values. He may have been my toughest opponent at one time. However, his respect and his dedication to public service and his love for Arizona is something I strongly admire. And she also goes on to say that our Arizona, the state of Arizona, so lucky to have him represent all of us. Rest in peace, Maverick.
So very true. And also, we're getting word right now from Speaker of the House, J.D. Mesnard, and he sent out this tweet saying, Arizona has lost a relentless warrior, our nation has lost a steadfast defender, and the world has lost a beacon of democracy. He fiercely fought to protect and expand freedom around the globe, and his legacy is a lifetime of courage and public service. Hashtag rest in peace, John McCain.
And here's somebody who knows JD very well. You know Ann Kirkpatrick very well. These are two people
again,
on far political sides of the spectrum.
I was going to say the really strong words, and eloquent words for, a man from both sides of the aisle. I mean, this is authentic. These aren't trite platitudes that they're just trotting out there.
Not at all.
This is very authentic. I mean, I just read a tweet, and I'm paraphrasing from it was a New York Times reporter who had covered him for years, and I'm going to paraphrase here. He said basically, John McCain wasn't perfect, but the thing that made him great was he knew he wasn't.
Yeah, he admitted it oftentimes.
He's an imperfect man.
He would come out and admit it oftentimes. I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to read or watch the HBO special that they did on him, a biography. It's John McCain, For Whom the Bells Will Toll. Anyhow, in it, they're talking about when he was taken captive and how he chose to stay in because he knew they would use it for propaganda, oftentimes asking him and reminding him and questioning him, who is your father again? Who is your father again? But he says when he accepted the Republican nomination for president, my country saved me and I cannot forget it, and I will fight for her as long as I draw breath. So help me God. And that's basically how he lived his life. And it talks about how, remember, this was the grandson and the son of a naval officer. And when you serve to that highest degree, honor is the bottom line there, and that's how he lived his
And think
life.
about the expectations of being the grandson and a son of two Navy admirals, the expectations put upon you. And I think you can look back now and you can say he exceeded those expectations.
But remember, growing up, he was a bit of a rebel. He was a bit of a rebel.
Listen, he's a rebel being a maverick in politics. That rebel never left him, Javi. He always had that rebel in him, and he enjoyed it. He enjoyed kind of ruffling the feathers, at the Capitol and Congress and things as such. But as you so mentioned, right, that is his life. What we saw as a prisoner of war, and him saying, "No, do not release me unless you are going to release all of my men." And he decided to stay in the trenches with his men. And that is the true embodiment of the man who Senator John McCain is. And by the way, John McCain first became known to Americans when he was taken, again, as a prisoner of war in Vietnam.
Yeah, Jared Dillingham traveled to Hanoi and found McCain's time there is etched in the country's history.
You could probably hear the hustle and bustle of Hanoi right around us. This is exactly where John McCain crashed in 1967. He was on a mission trying to take out a power plant outside of Hanoi when his plane was hit, and he ended up parachuting into this lake here. He was really badly injured. He had a number of broken bones, and a lot of the people who happened to be in this area, the North Vietnamese, saw him land in the water, ran over. They didn't try to help him. They beat him severely and then pulled him out of the water. McCain was taken on a short drive through what are now noisy, crowded streets in Hanoi to the nearby Ho Lo prison, which U.S. POWs nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton. Most of the old prison complex has been torn down. The remaining part here in the middle of Hanoi has been turned into a museum, which really whitewashes over a lot of the torture and mistreatment of the POWs. John McCain's flight suit and his parachute are on display inside. McCain's gear is damaged but intact after all these years. It's encased in a room full of Vietnamese propaganda. Videos claiming kind treatment of the POWs, and photos showing American captives celebrating holidays and playing sports. A lot of McCain's time here was spent in solitary confinement, and when the North Vietnamese realized McCain's father had been elevated to a naval commander, they offered to release McCain, but he refused to leave the other POWs behind. He ended up spending 5.5 years inside this prison. Some of these small, dark cells were preserved. It's unclear whether McCain spent any time in any of the cells which still stand here today. John McCain first returned here in 1985, and he's come back many times through the years, and he's become a huge proponent of opening up relations between Vietnam and the United States. And back here at the lake McCain parachuted into, there is one memorial to him. His name is right here on this memorial on one of the bridges. This lake is a beautiful spot, again, right in the middle of Hanoi. It is surrounded by a lot of families in the different parks, a lot of restaurants. A lot has changed here in the last 50 years. In Hanoi, Vietnam, I'm Jared Dillingham for Arizona's Family.
All right, what a fascinating story that was when Jared Dillingham told our bosses he was headed to Vietnam, and he got there and said, folks, there's an incredible museum dedicated to Senator John McCain and what he went through. I got to shoot a story on it, and that's the story that Jared filed.
An amazing look through history there. I mean, great work there, but it also shows, we talked about how he made friends.
The influence of people around the world.
Political enemies. But
Absolutely.
look, he led the way. John McCain was very instrumental in normalizing relations with Vietnam after that, really contentious chapter and dark chapter in American life.
Both he and John Kerry.
Personally, and both he and John Kerry did that. They led the way on that.
And that talks about how he continued to reach across the aisle. Here's John Kerry, here's John McCain. Mm-hmm. They both stood on different sides of the Vietnam War, and they decided they were going to forge it forward, and they were going to fix the problem and what they called a dark place in history.
Right.
And John McCain apparently going to President Clinton and saying, listen, I'm tired of this stain on not only the country, but in my life as well. And that's when change came.
And that's a mutual respect between former Senator John Kerry and Senator John McCain about saying, hey, we have both served our country very proudly. We may have different fundamental views of where we want this country to go, but let's find ourselves in the commonality of what we fought for this country and the love for this country. And John McCain always said this, if we focus all of us have our differences, but if we focus on our similarities and the love that we all have for this country, we can work together and get something done. And that's really the legacy that John McCain always preached. We're going to have our differences. Let's find the things we can agree on, and let's try to work together.
In the enormity of everything of the life that was John McCain, it's, sometimes you kind of forget just all the things that he did, and I think normalizing relations kind of healed that wound. Again, that was a dark chapter in American life. It nearly tore the country apart, and I think normalizing those relationships did a lot to heal the country and a lot of the people who served over there.
All right, we again have more reaction coming into our newsroom tonight. Again, responses from across the country and our nation. This one coming from Senator Lindsey Graham. He says that America and freedom have lost one of her greatest champions, and I have lost one of my dearest friends and mentor.
And also getting reaction this afternoon from Democratic candidate for District 8, Harel Tipernini, saying, quote, "For over 3 decades, Senator John McCain served the people of Arizona in Congress with great courage and poise. He served the American people even longer and redefined, quote, maverick for the modern era. Senator McCain was more than a politician. He was an American hero. His many years of service left an indelible mark on our country. My heart goes out to his loved ones as they mourn his tremendous loss to our state, nation, and world."
And Representative Congressman Andy Biggs just tweeted out, "Cindy and I offer our sincerest condolences to the McCain family on the passing of Senator John McCain, an American war